All right, and we are live. The videos posted here at the RSP Film Room are not hosted on this server, and the original video content's not considered property of the Rookie Scouting Portfolio Film Room. The videos here are considered to be used under the Fair Use Doctrine of the United States Copyright Law, Title 17, U.S. Code, Sections 107 through 118. I'm sure that is just scintillating reading. Videos are used on this site for editorial and educational purposes only. And the Rookie Scouting Portfolio Film Room and its staff do not claim ownership of any original video content. Draft breakdown, because they do the same thing here. Rookie Scouting Portfolio Film Room and its staff do not use said video clips in advertisements, marketing, or for direct financial gain, and all video in each clip is considered owned by the individual broadcast companies. We're just doing this here for us to be able to have an opportunity to watch film together, educate ourselves, and educate anybody here who is joining us to watch film about football players. And these are no more than 5 to 10 minute clips that are highlights of players. So we're not even rebroadcasting an entire game. So with that mouthful said and read from the Draft Breakdown site, as you can tell, I am Matt Waldman. This is the RSP Film Room, and I am very pleased to have joining me for the first time from Football Gameplan, Mr. Gene Clemmons. Gene, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining me.
Well, I'm happy to be here.
Gene, can you tell us a little bit about, how you got into watching film? Because it's always fun to listen to for everyone to hear kind of the stories of how people arrive to doing this kind of thing.
Well, if you know anything about Emory, you know everything that's associated with what we do at Football Game Plan is coming from a background of people who played the sport, coached the sport, and have continued to have a love for the sport. I started off watching film like everyone else that ever played football started off watching film, which is, in the coach's office and going over those things. And I really took a liking to it to where I was one of those guys who was in the film room even when you weren't required to be in the film room. Because of that, I think I had a little step ahead of evaluating players when I went into coaching. And so after college, I went into coaching, and I've been a coach now for, since 2004. So since I graduated from college, I've been coaching. I've coached at several different levels, anywhere from youth league to high school to college. And so I've been across all different types of platforms when it comes to football. I've coached at all different types of skill levels. I've coached on the offensive side. I've coached on the defensive side. And with that, I think one of the best things that I bring to Football Game Plan is really looking at players and evaluating how they're being used and why they're being used that way. And so it really became a great relationship between Emory and I, because I'm a lot more on the writing side than I am on the broadcasting side. Although I still love, when we do our radio shows and we do our webcast, I really like writing as well. So it's a great relationship, because Emory loves the videos, I love the written portion, and so we have a great dichotomy that way.
That's great, and certainly it's a pleasure to have you on. I've been looking forward to this. I love the work that Football Game Plan does, and I would recommend to anybody out there, because the content's great. I mean, I've certainly, in some of the outlets that I've been writing for this year, whenever I've seen, I've watched a James O'Shaughnessy or a Darius Davis, or a variety of guys that are out there, Adrian Coxon, and I saw them for the first time at Football Game Plan, and I try to do the best I can to let people know that that's where I saw it first. Because while we all understand in this industry that nobody, quote unquote, discovered the world here when it comes to this stuff, it is nice to be able to say, hey, look, these guys were, don't credit me for being the first person that saw this stuff, because I certainly didn't. I know that Gene and Emory and Tehran were certainly out there doing a lot of good work, and I happened to catch it just checking out their work, and was like, I want to see these guys a little bit more and see if I feel the same way they do about it. So keep up the great work, guys, and I would definitely recommend everyone to check out their site, footballgameplan.com. With that in mind, Gene, I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about why you chose Breshad Perriman, and really what it is that maybe just as an overview, what people are probably going to see today that maybe they haven't quite that may be similar or different from what his reputation is right now.
Well, it really came about when the explosion of Breshad Perriman happened after he ran his 40 at his pro day. All of a sudden, a guy that no one was really talking about as a prospect, period, became someone that was thrust into a top 15, top 20 prospect. We've seen this story before with the Darius Hayward Bays of the world. We've we've seen we've seen evaluators fall in love with speed. And so when I went back and started looking at film again, because I realized, okay, this guy played with a guy who was a top 5 pick last year as a quarterback, and yet he was on nobody's radar. He played this year in a conference that I consider to be a conference that's a decent conference, but not a upper echelon conference, and he wasn't dominant. And so I simply asked the question on Twitter: it, somebody tell me what I'm missing when I look at the film about Rashad Perriman. And I like to let everybody know this isn't a hater thing. It's not something where I'm rooting for the kid not to succeed. I simply, as an evaluator of talent, I'm sitting there going, if I was a GM, would I really take Breshad Perriman as a first round wide receiver? And my answer to that is probably no. And I think that we're gonna highlight the things that he does well and the things that we think probably would have dropped him out of the top round, maybe even 2 rounds for us.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point, and I'm so appreciative that you do mention, just to go out of your way to mention that. Look, I think we all, as people who evaluate football players, are rooting for these football players to succeed, no matter what it is that we see that we may feel like may be obstacles for them to reach that success, or potential obstacles, and that certainly does not exclude Breshad Perriman. So with that in mind, the first game that we are going to watch is the NC State game that was from 2014, and we'll check out some of his play here. And I'm glad that you brought up speed, because I think that people do get enamored with speed in a way where they forget that speed is really, there's a baseline level, and then everything else can really be icing on the cake, especially if you don't have the technique that you need to be able to get separation, because separation's more than speed. It's more than the initial quickness. It often has to do with understanding what you have in front of you in terms of your coverage, what it means in terms of how you use your hands, and as well as you use your steps and your body to be able to get into position so that you can dictate the pace and of a route. And there's also just a lot of little things that have to do with recognition that we'll talk about, that allows a player to think fast. And you can be at you could run oftentimes there's a great video on YouTube somewhere, I remember I've posted before, where you can see players in practice who ran a 4.3 40 and a guy who ran a 4.6 40, and you can see the 4.6 40 playing way faster at wide receiver and getting separation way easier than the 4.3 guy. And a lot of it has to do with some of the things that we'll probably touch upon today. So here we go. So with that in mind, for those of you who are new to the RSP film room, there's just a couple of guys watching the game. I'm going to pull this up from Draft Breakdown, and it's a great site again to visit. And we'll probably play this in real time as well as in half speed, whatever is going to be easier for both of us to be able to see with what we have going on here. So I'm going to start it at half speed, Gene, and just make sure that it isn't too jumpy. And just let me know if you have any issues seeing it or anything like that.
Okay.
All right, so we got Perriman at the top of the screen here, and we got a defender playing tight already.
Yeah, see, I look at it and immediately the first thing I notice is game planning as a coach. I want to try to give my guy the best opportunity to be successful. And I'm looking and I'm saying, okay, we're going to set him off the ball. Well, why are we setting him off the ball? Is there a reason for us to set him off the ball? I think that's very interesting to look at. I think if you look at the way in which he catches this ball, it takes away any opportunity for yards after the catch. He's drifting away from the pass as the pass comes to him. And as we both know, at the next level, this linebacker, number 4, he's not going to be dropping back, falling to give him that gap. So you really want to attack the ball and make sure you get it. That might allow him to go lateral instead of up the field right there, avoid that other outside linebacker, and then make some yards after the catch with this speed that we now know that he possesses.
Yeah. And when you see, and again, when you're talking about a good part of that comes down to running good routes. And you see with a route like with this type of a break, you could see the opportunity. And some of this is maybe nitpicking, but when we talk about nitpicking, this is what's important to the NFL. You should be nitpicking when you're at this level. Everything is nitpicking, and everything that you're nitpicking is important because it's that smallest percentage of error that you want to avoid. And when you watch this route, you can see it's a quick turn, but can he get that far leg over a little bit faster? Because if he does that a little bit faster, the route stays flat a little bit more. And then when he drives off of it, like you said, he fades in this direction. I mean, the turn's not too bad, but then he does fade a little bit more. I mean, at least he catches with his hands, and you can see why he's at least considered a top half of the board prospect. That there are, some of the things that you'll see is that he is he can catch the ball with his hands. He's certainly not averse to dealing with coverage that is, catching the ball in tight coverage as well.
And I agree. And I think that tight coverage is very, him catching the ball in tight coverage is one thing. But again, I go back to this speed. He catches a lot of balls in tight coverage.
Yes, exactly.
He catches a lot of balls in tight coverage, and we'll see as we keep going on. I don't want to keep on harping on the same play, but really, the separation needs to be there when you're a 4.2 40 guy. When I used to watch Joey Galloway pulled away from people when he ran routes. It was hard to stay in front of him. When I watched the top, whom I believe is the second best wide receiving prospect of the last 2 years, Amari Cooper, I see him pull away from everyone. I saw him absolutely dismantle whom I believe is going to be a top 10 pick next year, Vernon Hargreaves III. I saw him absolutely dismantle him in a game, and it wasn't even a question of whether or not he was better than Hargreaves at the time. And Hargreaves had him one-on-one essentially the entire game, and it was a massacre for Cooper. And I've just never seen that with Perriman, and supposedly Perriman is 0.2 seconds faster than Amari Cooper is. So I look at those, and those are the things that bring the red flags out to me and go, wait a minute, let's back up and see exactly what we're dealing with. Yeah. Again, we're looking at this play. He's off the ball. I believe it's schemed that way.
And one of the things that certainly can be the case, and tell me if you either disagree or have more to add with this, but oftentimes, when they scheme a guy off the ball here, there is often an indication that they feel like it would be easier for this particular player to be able to get a release when he has tighter coverage over top, because they don't feel confident with his ability to get that early release in this type of a situation.
It's totally the case. And he's a big body receiver, and big body receivers, sometimes they're either ultra physical where they can avoid contact, or they fall prey to being available to become Velcro. And so I think when you take them off the ball, you give them an ability to free release. And we've seen that in these first two plays where they have him off the ball. Again, part of it is scheme, and you can't fault the coaches. It's not his fault. He's not being given the opportunity to show he can get off the press. But I think that I'll I'll defer to the coaches who've probably seen him on a day in, day out basis and say, hey, let's get this kid off of the ball.
Yeah, and certainly Kelvin Benjamin saw that quite a bit at Florida State last year. And if you look at his tape, you would see where he's often even further off the ball, off the line than on plays like this. And he was often on trip sets where he had two guys in front of him, and he was a good 4 to 5 yards off the ball on a consistent basis. And as despite his size, that was an issue for him early on in routes. And the easier they could get him downfield, the more he could use his size to his advantage. But it's one of those issues that for a receiver, it's this first 5 to 10 yards that are critical.
In cutting route, I think that's a great job of weaving through traffic by Perriman. He does have a way about him when it comes to working in traffic. I really do like that about his game. I don't think he's afraid of contact, and that's another great thing about being a big-bodied receiver, to not be afraid to go across the middle. Again, though, he catches the ball. If he stays a little bit flatter when he comes across, he can catch this ball and then use that speed, because there's a gap right there when he clears that linebacker. There's a gap there. If he comes right across, he catches that ball cleanly, and then he has the chance to run after. And that's what the game is in the NFL. It's can you get me yards after the catch? And a lot of times I see him, he catches the ball and he's going down a lot immediately following that catch.
And explain to our audience this concept, because I think a lot of times people can mistake what they may look at what you're saying and they might argue a point that I think your point is the correct point, but I think that people will say, well, that doesn't make sense because it's 3rd and 6. He's trying to run a route to the depth to the marker. But explain to the people why taking a flatter course here, even though it's 3rd and 6, is really the wiser course to take for a receiver in this situation as it is.
Well, there's two thought process. Either he should have pushed vertical another step before he broke across, or by coming across flatter, what he does is he creates more separation from the defensive back. That separation from the defensive back, you can see that as he goes north and south, as he drifts up the field, he actually condenses the distance between him and the defensive back, which allows the defensive back to be able to trip him up. Now, he gets the first down there, but had he kept that route flat, he may have been able to catch it, use his speed to disappear from that defensive back another 2 steps before he turned up the field, and he's got nothing but real estate up there to work with. There's green grass because those other guys are in a man coverage on the other side. They're not even paying attention to him running.
That's a great point. And see, as you can see here, if you were to try to just extrapolate where he would be, you would probably say that he'd catch the ball about a yard short of the marker, just inside this hash where I have my cursor arrow at. And you do that, the defender is probably right up here still at this spot, but there's more separation, like you said, and look at all that space.
And he's a tall kid, so he can lean, he can reach the ball out and get a first down. The first down is not the question right here, because in the NFL, we're talking about the ability to create explosive plays, and you don't get a lot of opportunity to create explosive plays in the NFL because defensive backs are so good now, and they're so instinctive. They're so instinctive that they're jumping those routes.
So how easy is this for a receiver to learn, in your opinion, at this point? Learning to be more disciplined about flattening his breaks and recognizing situations like this.
Well, the best part about what he's going into now is his life is football. His job is football. This will be something that the wide receiver coach brings up with him as soon as he steps foot into the, into the facility. 2 plays, 2 plays in a row, he's drifted away on the ball. So if you're a wide receiver coach, the coach is going to tell him, hey, listen, you got to attack that ball. And sports science is actually really good at showing these types of things. The difference between catching a ball drifting away versus catching a ball flat, the amount of space you can create just by, that half second or that quarter of a second that you're saving in your route. So I think that it's an easy thing to correct because this is going to be his job now. He doesn't have to worry about going to classes. He doesn't have to worry about, where his next meal is going to come from. He can spend all day in the wide receiver coach office learning the techniques that's going to help make him a better player. So it's a fixable thing. But again, for me, and the way in which I deal with evaluations, and I know that a lot of our guys over at Football Game Plan, when we're picking someone in the first round, we want guys who've mastered these types of things. In the NFL, you lose when you draft on potential. You end up losing your job. To me, you should be drafting the guys who've already shown that they have the tools necessary to compete right now in the first round. And I just don't know how that's going to transition immediately for Breshad Perriman. That's the $1 million question.
And I think that's an excellent point because, again, how do you define what a first round pick is? And that's essential to how you're going to evaluate. If you're, if you're going to, I often relate it to this way. I mean, I think that you're absolutely right that when you look at it and say, a first round pick should be a safe pick, should be some of the safest picks that you make. It should be, you're not trying to hit the bullseye in terms of, how would I put this? You could look at it one of two ways. You could say you're not trying to hit the bullseye, you're just trying to hit the target. But in that essence, the target, but if you say that, it's like, that makes it sound like it's too safe of a pick. But, and you're not going for a player, you're not looking at someone who, I guess I'll put it this way, from an athletic standpoint, you're not trying to aim for the bullseye. You're just trying to aim for the target, and your target should be a high enough standard that then you're looking at the technique, you're looking at the conceptual understanding of the game, you're looking at on the field, off the field, if you are a team, work ethic, those types of things, the soft skills that you would look for to make sure that this is a guy that you feel comfortable with overall. But, just being able to look at someone and say, he's tall, he's strong, he's fast, he should be able to do this, doesn't mean anything. There's a guy like, Mario Manningham is a perfect example of a receiver who was very talented receiver coming out of Michigan. But you look at a route where instead of, on vertical routes, you have a similar concept. We could look at this and say, if he was running down outside this hash right now that I'm pointing out, and it was a deeper throw, say it was a streak, a savvier receiver understands how to buy this horizontal space and lean out to the sideline at the last moment to gain that separation late. It's a very similar concept to going across the middle here and flattening the route. But if you have a guy like Manningham, who was very talented as an athlete, who's still in New York for 2 to 3 years into his career, was still, hogging the sideline and never didn't save that space, made his throws more difficult, made his targets more difficult on the whole. And it was just a little thing that, he had time to learn. And so, it's a good example of a player that, he had other issues why he dropped a little bit, but he was certainly seen as a higher end talent, and people were automatically assuming that he would learn these things. And go ahead.
Well, no, I think it's interesting. You make a great point. And when you look at someone like Manningham, you look at a guy who has the physical tools, but did he ever actually develop the muscle memory to help himself be a better tactician at the receiving position? There's guys who hang around for many years, who are past their prime or who were never that athletically gifted as wide receivers, because they become tacticians. And there are many guys who have infinite amounts of physical ability who flame out in 2 to 3 years. It's not that they can't still run fast or jump high or even catch the ball, is that they never picked up those subtle nuances that make you a viable receiver in the NFL. I look at the wide receiver from Oakland, Jones. He was the leading receiver for Oakland last year. And now we're learning that they're not going to retain him. He's going to be a free agent. Why?
Yeah.
Because why? There's a reason that he's not going to stick. Well, they picked up a receiver, in free agency that they think is an upgrade. Number two, they picked up the best wide receiver in the draft. And so, in my opinion, they looked at it and they said, well, this guy is never going to be 1,000-yard receiver. He's always going to be, he had an opportunity to be the number one, and he wasn't 1,000-yard wide receiver. He's not a rookie. He's not a second-year guy. He's a guy who's been in the league for a while. So now he's going to become a journeyman, and we'll see what happens to him from there. But it's telling to me that they didn't feel comfortable keeping him on and turning him into the third wide receiver, because last year he was the primary target for a rookie Carr, and I thought he did a decent job, but you never saw those things from Jones to make you feel like, yeah, he's a guy that I definitely want to be my number one or number two. And eventually that staff probably looked up and said, do we really want this guy to be a number three? And if not, we're probably paying him way too much money.
Yeah, I mean, let's think about a couple players here. Roddy White is a perfect example of a player that when you watched him, say, 3 years ago before his injuries, and you see the routes that he runs where he's covered like a glove, and it's 3rd and 15, and he runs a comeback or runs a deep out, and it's off of the defender knows it's coming. The defender knows that that he's going to get targeted, and White and Ryan still make the play. That's about precision. It's about these little things. It's that muscle memory, like you said. It's why Derek Mason, well past his prime, was such a good receiver, even still, when he went to Baltimore after some good years in Tennessee, and Cordero Patterson is still learning the game, and he might be the best open field runner we have ever seen. You
said a mouthful right there. Said a mouthful right there. And what I ask myself is, at the end of the day, or at the beginning, right now, when you're looking at Breshad Perriman, is he an upgrade over Torrey Smith?
Yeah. And that's a good question. And I would say absolutely not.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And what you have to hope is that he improves more than what Torrey Smith improved. Because in my opinion, I don't think Torrey Smith ever developed to the level that Baltimore wanted him to develop to. But that could be the exact same case that they have with a guy like Perriman.
Here's another question. Here's another question for you about this. And ask yourself that, now this might be a question that might be easier to answer, but we're going to find out this summer. Is Breshad Perriman an upgrade to Malcolm Brown?
That's a very good question. That's a very good question.
Because Malcolm Brown last year, maybe. Malcolm Brown when he was a rookie, and how he produced, I would say the answer would be maybe physically, yes, but who's going to know the system better? Who's going to have another year of work, as their full-time job, being healthy doing this? And the answer is going to be Malcolm Brown and Kamar Aiken, and not Breshad Perriman.
And see, this is a good play right here, because we get an opportunity to see kind of what you were talking about. Now he's close to the line of scrimmage, but again, notice there is if I'm not mistaken, he's on the line of scrimmage now, so he gets an opportunity to work against press coverage. he opens up. He gives the impression of a fade ball or a vertical. You can see him give up a little real estate. And again, we're nitpicking, but this is what we do. He's giving up real estate. It's a fade ball, and you can see where where the ball is when he goes to try to high point it versus where he started his route at.
Yep.
That to me tells me he never stemmed up the defensive back and got on top of him. He let the defensive back widen him out. Look, he's inside the numbers. He's inside the numbers probably 2 to 3 yards. He starts working his fade ball, and the defensive back pushes him out past the numbers. When the ball is delivered to him, he's a clear 2 yards outside of the numbers.
Yeah.
It may not sound like a lot, but he's giving himself less real estate to play with towards that sideline. And again, I apologize. Again,
no, go ahead, please.
I'm looking at this and I'm going, okay, this is him one-on-one, right? He's a 4.240 guy. Where's the separation?
Yep. And this is the thing. This is the same questions I've asked of Devontae Parker, actually, in some cases, because this is a common trait. I remember talking to a receiver coach, talking to actually Villanova's receiver coach recently, in this past year. And earlier in the year, I said, when you watch a play like this and you're basically veering outside from the get-go and you have a defender tight to your hip like this, you're giving this defender your hip. And it's a pass. It's really actually a passive release, because you're not, you should, if you're this big, it doesn't matter what size you are, but especially if you're this big as a receiver, learning to use your hands to attack this defender, stay inside, get into the defender's body and use your hands to then work outside. Within the first 5 yards, if you do that, you're going to have the defender not on your hip, but behind you. And you can then stack that defender, get your back to the defender. And now you control the pace, you control your position, and that defender will have to run through you to get any position on this particular route, because he's not running side by side with you anymore. He's running and staring at the back of your jersey. And if you are, and here he's giving that up from the get-go because he's not attacking this defender. He's just trying to fake him out and get wide immediately, rather than get into his body, use his hands, and then hopefully within the first 3 to 5 yards clear him.
Yeah, he never stems up. He never stems up the defensive back. He never gives him any type of move. He doesn't really use his hands. Again, he just tries to run around him. He jumps up for the ball. And that to me, that's a play that if you're a star, that's a touchdown.
Right. Yeah.
That if you're a star, that's a touchdown. Because if you stay truer to the numbers on the inside, then you don't give that other defensive back the opportunity to come over and make a play on the ball.
Yeah, absolutely. And earning that position starts from the beginning, It starts from the very beginning of the play.
Now, clean release. He's got no difficulties in the release. It's again, it's a bad pass. The pass is behind him, and I understand it. I'm assuming that this is a post route, but I'm not really sure. I'm going to assume it's a skinny. He catches it. The ball's behind him. He catches it, and he immediately goes to the ground. The yards after the catch, what do we have? Yeah, great job catching the ball. If he catches it a little bit more cleanly, I don't know if that helps him to stay up. You can tell he double clutches. That's your first catch, and then he kind of bobbles it into his body right there. But he does it. He's not able to keep his feet. And that's just so important. It's so important in the NFL for receivers to keep their feet. If that's Dez Bryant, if that's a Dez Bryant, he's catching that, and because it's behind him, he's going to peer away, turn, and run for a touchdown the other way.
Yep.
And to me, when you're a first round draft pick as a wide receiver, and I believe Amari Cooper has this ability, I believe that I believe a guy like Nelson Aguilar has this ability, because the one thing that Aguilar excels at is his ability to run after the catch.
Absolutely.
And so when you look at a guy like Perriman, 4.2 guy, I just go, when is he getting an opportunity to use this 4.2 speed if he can't stay on his feet?
Yeah, and here's another two guys as a very stark contrast. Oh, Larry Fitzgerald, I don't think ran a very fast 40.
4.6.
Yeah, 4.6 40. He turns, keeps his feet, and runs upfield on this play. Mm-hmm. Or Mr. Brandon, I had the flu Lloyd with a 4.7 40, who routinely torched defenders when he was playing at his best, would also be able to turn and run on this type of play.
And both of those guys have something in common. They were both phenomenal. They were both phenomenal in college. They were stars in college. And they separated themselves on the field of play in college. That's something that we can't necessarily say about Breshad Perriman. He never really separated himself as a premier pass catcher in the college game. He didn't come onto the scene until after his season was over with, and he ran a 40-yard dash. And I hate to harp back on it, but this is the basis for what our conversation is tonight is, you know, where is the skills that we see when we actually put the film on that says this kid is a first-round draft pick? Right. I think this kid, I believe Rashad Perriman is a fantastic developmental wide receiver. He's a raw clay that if you had him to work with and you got him at a value, you would be jumping up and down. But I think he's a reach as a first-round draft pick.
And when you watch here, I mean, again, this is a good example of a player. It's a small thing, but a player who has his hands technique refined. Now, it's good he attacks here, but you notice that he had his hands where he needed to be at the first moment, but in that adjustment, that backhand kind of comes underneath, and he's not able to attack it fully the way he needed to, and the ball slides right through his hands, and that's why, you know, like you said, it goes into his body, has to double catch it. You know, if he was able to catch it away from his body, this isn't the problem, but he had to trap it into his gut, and that's going to put you on the ground. And it's just one play, but we're seeing a lot of these little things, and this theme, like you said, continues, is when you see a lot of these little tiny, I don't know if I want to say little errors, but let's call them non-fatal errors, you know. They're non-fatal errors, but enough non-fatal errors turn into one fatal error, you know, and turn into a problem. You know, that's a problematic thing when you have a lot of little issues to deal with.
I definitely agree. It's just it's death by paper cut. That's what it is.
Yes, that's a great term. Let's see if there's anything here that we need to give a quick look to.
I mean, it looks like a go route. I'll just mention the fact it's a busted coverage, but how much room does he give himself to play with on the sideline? You're looking at it right there. He is right on the edge of the sideline.
Yeah.
You're not giving your quarterback any opportunity. You're not giving your quarterback any opportunity to be wrong. He should stay on this highway. He should stay on top of the numbers. If he stays on top of the numbers, he at least gives himself that area to play with on the sideline. I don't know why the quarterback's not looking at him right now.
Yeah.
And again, that goes back to this guy's a stud. He's your best pass catcher. Why are you not looking at him first on many plays? to me, that says a lot.
Yeah, it's a great point too. It's not always about what the player does cause and effect on the field, but also the confidence level that the quarterback has and what the quarterback's behavior is. And that's something that can be, obviously, like you said, built from repeat behaviors of what he's seen from his receiver.
Now, I don't know if he knew he wasn't. Can you go back to this last
Yeah.
route? I don't know if he knew he wasn't the primary target on this, but look at this route. What? That's a lazy route. In my opinion, that's just a lazy route. The way he ran at it was almost as if he knew he wasn't going to be involved. You see the way it's obviously one of those routes that you run the clear out. He's supposed to come underneath. That should be a sharp route at an angle that gets him separation from that guy. He almost runs into the defender because he just kind of rounds it and he drags his outside leg around in this route. It's a classic thing that young wide receivers do. When they drag that foot around, when you tell them to stick that foot in the ground and go, and they just kind of drag it along with them.
Yeah,
but he doesn't make any separation there.
Yeah, and it needs to be sharper. This foot coming right there, that needed to be around to the point where this leg is actually further. It's actually, more in line with that back leg here. So it's like he's swinging the hip around.
He should be aiming for that referee. Where that referee was when he came out of his break, that's where he should have been aiming. And if you when he comes out of the break, watch where the referee is, right there. That's where he should be at. He should be coming directly at that line. Both guys, I mean, these are mirrored routes on both sides. So I can't really say that he wasn't a primary receiver. It's a mirrored route. They're both doing the same thing. Again, it's money time, and your quarterback goes to the other guy. I'm nitpicking, but these are the things that I'm looking at when I'm deciding on who I'm taking as a wide receiver.
So this leads to the next question then, because when you're looking at with examples here, you mentioned Cooper. Who are other first-round wide receivers in this class? Are there other? You mentioned Aguilar as well. Would Aguilar qualify to you as a guy that you feel like was a first-round guy for you this year? Or
yeah, I had Aguilar as a first-round talent. I thought that his run after the catch ability was phenomenal. His background, and I know a little bit more about his background because he's from Tampa. My brother actually coached him as a youth league kid. He was a running back. He was a running back in high school his entire life and ran for some ungodly amount of yards. Down here in Tampa, he's long and he's angular, but he's still put together. And when he catches the ball, he catches it like a running back, which is why he's so good in the return game, because he's used to having the ball in his hand and running. I think that ability mixed with his physical traits. If you look at it, I would compare it to Golden Tate for the Lions, but faster and bigger.
There you go.
And to me, you're a bigger, faster Golden Tate than you're a first-round draft pick in my book.
There you go. Well, I'm with you. I have him as a first. I don't grade by round, but he was certainly a guy that I saw as one of the top receivers in this class. So,
and I'm with you. I don't necessarily get into the whole grading. I'm nowhere near into it as deep when it comes to grading these guys like Emory, and some of our other constituents are. I look at, do I want this kid if I've got a 1 through 32 pick? If I've got a 1 through 32 pick, do I want this kid? And the answer is yes. I actually had him earmarked in for a few different teams that I thought he would fit in well with. And then obviously, we haven't talked about Kevin White, but I think Kevin White's a guy whom has he has the measurables. I've actually seen the speed show up on film, but I still do have questions about him and his viability as a upper echelon first round draft pick. I thought that he was a guy, in my opinion, who was a back of the first round kind of guy. Someone that maybe like a Denver, a team where he didn't have to come in and be the man, would take on, would be able to take him on and groom him under a good quarterback. I actually think that the Bears was a great landing spot for him because they have some other pass receivers who had similar, who I believe had similar issues to what he's going to have coming into the NFL. And so I think it's going to be great for him to learn from those guys as he matures and goes on with his professional career.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. It's good stuff, and I really like how you set really one of the things that you've done today that separates something new from what I've seen in other film rooms is you've talked about what you're looking for, maybe not in like bit by bit detail, but you've given a lot of really good details as to why a player is or is not a first round pick to you, and that it's about those consistent small details. And I think that we haven't really touched upon that yet. And I think that that's really great for today. Another thing that I noticed back in this game, we look at Perriman, is he hops off of the line of scrimmage. You see him, he has a hop consistently with a lot of his routes rather than really just taking clear steps during that release, which can be, I know that like someone like a Jeff Lloyd who's online with us has talked about that in the past is, either a tell or a situation that gives a defender a chance to deliver a punch and knock a guy off balance if he starts seeing that on a routine basis.
Well, yeah, and I think that the takeoff is football's dirty little secret about wide receiver play. Most wide receivers false step probably 1 out of every 3 times they take off. It is a normal thing. It's something that's annoying, especially at the lower levels. But you notice that the elite level guys, they're able to take that out of their game because they know that step is costing them an extra tenth of a second, and that's all it takes versus these superb defensive backs. Gone are the days where the premier athletes play wide receiver. The premier athletes play defensive back because everybody's looking for a 6'1", 6'2", long, athletic defensive back. 6'3" wide receivers grow on trees nowadays because guys that used to be turned into defensive ends or outside linebackers are now being allowed to play wide receiver, which is why you have guys that are 6'1", 6'2", 6'3", 215 pounds playing wide receiver, where you didn't see that back, 10 years ago. You saw 175-pound guys, 185-pound guys. It was the rarity to see a guy be 200 pounds and play wide receiver. But nowadays, you're seeing it more and more with those premier guys.
Yeah. And when you talk about a split second, you could measure it in steps if you think about the pace of steps that he takes after this hop. Because if you were to say, instead of this hop that comes up right here, and it was an extra step forward would put him about right here. And this defender's still flat-footed.
Yep, he's eating up the cushion. And now this right here is where his 4.2 speed should take over.
Yeah.
Right there is where you should see him fly by the defensive back.
And he would be in this defender's hip if he didn't take that hop.
Mm-hmm.
So, split second, an extra step, instead of being even with the guy, he would have been able to stack the man.
And I think it's a very good thing to look at and and see, hey, how much do we see this guy separate, even when the ball's not thrown to him? How much do we see him separate? This is a good, great catch. He catches with his hands. He turns back inside. Many believe when you catch balls like that, you should turn outside because outside allows that defensive back an opportunity to miss you because they're coming inside to tackle you. So you turn outside, you flip, maybe number five and the defensive back hits each other and you get a first down. But as it is, third and 10, he needs a first down. He's coming up short. Is it the technique I personally teach all my wide receivers to catch the ball and turn out because the defensive back is coming for where you from for the area that you are now. So when you just catch it and turn upfield, you actually turn directly in to where all of the pressure's coming. I think that that's something that for a guy who's been in college for a few years, he should definitely have learned by now. So then that goes back to your Manningham analogy. Is this a guy who's going to be able to change his spots once this is his full-time job? The answer is we'll see. I like to think that everybody has the ability to change and to refine their game, but we've seen that history shows us that's not always the case.
Right.
Okay, we've got an in breaking route right here. And again, this time he actually turns out and the guy's waiting for him, but they've got him bracketed coverage. It's a zone concept. That's not really a play that you're going to pick up extra yards afterwards. I'd love to see him be able to flip his hips around and be able to get his eyes on this defender a little bit faster. It seems like he leans into the hit, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Seems as if he just like he just sacrifices and just leans into the hit. A guy like elite level guys, they're finding a way to make something happen, or they're just going to get down. They're not going to take unnecessary shots.
And here's the other thing I notice in this game a lot with Perriman, and I notice a lot in his game every week, the window in which he catches the ball. And when I describe a window to those of you who are listening, it's that area of, a window could be this early. It could be wherever it is that he catches the ball. In early windows, you'd have his hands away from his body and attacking the ball. A later window would be the ball's a little closer to his body, but his hands are still up here. This is a very late window when the catch point that you're making with your hands is actually at your shoulder and almost beside your helmet. Now maybe part of this is the throw, but again, he's already stopped engaging where this ball should be coming. And consistently, I feel like he's either got his hands out early and can't make that catch initially, and it went into his body, like we saw earlier. Or on this play, where he gets his hands up, but they're late enough that he's having to make the play almost behind him to make that catch. And you want to see a guy, you want to see a guy who is catching the ball consistently at an early window. And right now, I'm just not seeing that from him.
Now, you got to like that toughness at the end. Those hits didn't bring him down. He was able to stay on his feet. He was able to keep churning. You've got to love that. You've got to love that toughness. You've got to love that tenacity about his game. But again, we're talking about technical skills that have absolutely nothing to do with toughness. No one's questioning this kid's toughness. No one's questioning his ability, to catch the ball, when he wants to. I think he has a lot of drops, and I'm not going to go like Mel Kiper Jr. and say that they're concentration drops. A drop is a drop. I don't really care how it happened. But those are, in my opinion, those are definitely things that can be fixed. But they better be fixed quickly because in the NFL they're not gonna put up with you having drops on a
Right.
consistent basis. See some of the see Braylon Edwards.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And this is the first play we get a chance to actually see him use his hands and chop over the arm and get upfield. And he was actually open on that play, but he wasn't targeted.
Yeah, and it was a great job by him to not be engaged by that corner. The corner's in definite trail mode, so they must have been on a man-to-man, one man in, one man out type of deal. That corner was supposed to carry him vertical. He's got him beat. Obviously, UCF had quarterback issues this year, and that's why you see a lot of those plays where he's not targeted, but he's wide open, and the quarterback should be looking at him.
And this is a good play where he should be looking at him too. Here, single coverage, got a middle safety on the opposite hash. This is a clear one-on-one opportunity.
Now here we see great. This is what you're hoping he is all the time. He's got press coverage, no false step. He gets right on his shoulder. He shows separation early. That should be a touchdown ball. That's a quarterback that's not able to deliver an NFL caliber throw. That won't be the case with Jay Cutler. If there's one thing Jay Cutler knows how to do, it's how to throw the ball deep. Excuse me, not Jay Cutler.
Flacco,
there's one thing that Joe Flacco knows how to do. Well, Jay Cutler knows how to do it as well.
Sure.
But there's one thing that Joe Flacco knows how to do is throw the ball deep. That's a touchdown in the NFL, and that's a touchdown route. The problem is that you don't see that consistently. You don't see that type of separation on a consistent basis.
Yeah.
But that's a great job separating by him right there. In my opinion, this is a ball that you have to catch.
Yeah.
It's 3rd and 6. Again, drifting away from the ball. You should be making sure you secure, because it doesn't matter if you get to the sticks if you drop the ball.
Yeah, you should be catching it right here. And this, again, you've got the official here, but you should be cutting almost underneath the official.
Mm-hmm.
You could be if the official, there's a risk of running into the official, but the official is likely he's anticipating a little bit too the receiver. So it's, if he cuts under a little bit underneath, the official probably is still probably going to get upfield. He may have to duck a little bit, but still.
And he catches the ball again. You create separation, you catch the ball cleanly, and then you're able to run after the catch. He's big enough that if he comes up a yard short, he can stretch for that first down. But as you look right there, he's blanketed. I mean, he's wearing that guy like a shirt right now.
Yeah.
And you're just not going to be able to get away. That defensive back does a great job of pulling on his hands, and he drops the ball. That's the ball you can't drop.
And he slaps the ball coming around because, again, the depth of this route. Watch him slap the ball.
Away. He's allowing the ball to come to him instead of going to attack the ball.
Yep.
And that's just something you can't do at that level.
Yeah.
And not attack.
Kenny Stills had this issue at Oklahoma on a consistent basis where he was more passive with his catch technique, and these types of things would happen in red area situations. So again, but Kenny Stills wasn't a first-round pick.
Exactly. And I think that's what we're getting at. It's not that this kid's not talented. It's not that this kid doesn't have ability. It's not that we wouldn't want this kid on our team. Trust me, I would love to have a Breshad Perriman on my team. But from what I see that he does, he's not a guy that I would risk a first-round pick on. Again, part of it is you got to look at who's throwing him the ball. And then part of it, you just go, well, where is the separation?
Yep. This is a better separation play as well. I don't think he hops on this one.
Nope, no, clean release.
And he's 7 yards off the line. He's already got his back to the defender. And this is just an underthrown ball.
Yeah, it's just a really bad ball. So you just, it's hard to tell. Sometimes he's winning, then sometimes he's not, and you just don't know if it's the ball that the quarterback's thrown or if it's him not separating. But in some of these cases, he's definitely winning, and that should be noted that he's winning, and he's winning against a defense that's pretty darn good. NC State's a good ACC defense.
Yep. And you look at this and you see, I mean, again, 7 yards off the line of scrimmage, he's already got a good step on the defender. He can cut that off if he wants to.
Which he doesn't, which we'd love to see him do.
Yes.
We'd love to see him step on top of the cornerback.
Yep.
Step on top of him when you get that release.
Yep. Stack it right there. That's where you want to do that, because it doesn't matter. You could have 4.6 speed, and if you do that to this number 30,
he's beat.
He's done. You control the pace the entire time. But when you give him your inside hip and let him just ride that hip downfield like this, he has the advantage. And this is a guy, this is a common thing of a guy who goes, it's God-given ability, rather than good. And God-given ability may get you to the NFL, but very rarely does it keep you there. No, yeah,
definitely not. Definitely not. And I always say is you got to look at these things. God-given ability. Well, why did God-given ability only land him at UCF? People talk about, well, he was a late bloomer, or he was this, or he was that. No. Talent is talent. By the time you hit your senior year, you are who you are. You just may have slipped through the cracks. But in the state of Florida, people don't slip through the cracks. You don't just get random guys going to, UCF unless there was something in their production that didn't match.
Now, I believe Mr. Perriman grew up in my state here with his dad, who did go to, but his dad, I believe, is from the Florida area. I know his dad went to Miami and played for the Detroit Lions, had a pretty nice career as a wide receiver, which then also leads to the question, you have a father who was who went to a Pro Bowl or two, I think, as a wide receiver.
He was a good receiver in the NFL. He had some good years. He had a lot more than a cup of coffee, that's for sure.
That's true.
Yeah, it's just it's tough. I mean, they had Pete Davino at quarterback at some times, and the UCF quarterback situation was a definite issue all year. Multiple guys were being looked at as someone that, as getting benched, or I believe that one of their quarterbacks is now trying to play wide receiver for them. But another thing I would also look at is the fight. He jumps up to try to get this ball, but he's got to knock this ball down. He's got to try to find a way to fight. That he knows that he's got to know that ball is underthrown from a long way away.
Yeah.
If you know that ball is underthrown, then make a play on it. Make a play on it. Like, go and get it, or at least go and knock it down. It's tough, and like I said, I know we're nitpicking, but at the end of the day, these are the things that separate you, in my opinion, from being, a guy whom I would be ecstatic with a third round. I'd be satisfied at a second round pick, but I'm probably not taking you, with my top 20 pick or my top 30 pick.
Right.
Again, he comes across. You can see him fading away. He fades right into contact.
Yep.
Because if this is supposed to be a post, it's a poorly run post. That's what I always say.
Where should be breaking a little bit more? Like here's his break point. Should he be coming in a little tighter here?
Yeah, I think if he's trying to create separation, then he should be coming flatter. But look at the ground that he continues to gain, and then he makes it a point to angle his body more up the field. Now, it's hard from what I'm looking at to see if maybe the ball took him that way. I can't really tell if it was a ball issue, that maybe the ball made him drift north and south, but I know that he should not be drifting north and south right here.
And when you see where he makes the catch, I mean, I think a little clue is, again, where's the catch point here? Where's the window in which he's making this play?
Yeah. Like I said, if that's a post route, and it could be that that's a post because I'm looking on the backside and I see a couple in cutting routes, it could be a post route. But if it is a post route, then he's got to run a better post route than that.
Yeah. And where he catches it, I don't think it's the delivery of the ball, because it's still a ball that he allows to get into his body here.
You're right.
And if he breaks it a little bit closer to this hash and doesn't drift as much, he's still catching the ball over his head with his hands above his head, as I'm reaching up and saying it and no one can see me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know, right? I've been doing that all night.
Right. And then, but then he's closer to the backer here, and then can angle that out and not lead himself into the receiver. And, people are going to give him credit. This is the difference again between a second and third round pick where you go, yeah, he's a second and third round pick, or he's a good player, good prospect who will develop because, man, he can make catches with his hands. He's got this, you can see where the speed could come into play on occasion. And he's a big guy, and he can take contact and hang on to the football. He'll take the hard hit. That's great. But in the NFL, you don't want to be taking these types of hits. You don't want to be out the next 3 weeks or having to pretend that you're out, that you're okay, when you're really not okay after you take some of these hits, to try and stay and continue to play in the game. And these are types of situations that not only cost you yards, but it's just the punishment you don't need to have.
Yeah, it's a CLE. It's a concussion level event. You're asking to get wrecked. You're asking to end up on SportsCenter when you're taking shots like that from legitimate NFL guys. To me it's just some of those. It's just that small minutia, that makes the difference between people who survive in the NFL and people who flame out.
Yeah. And let's not presume. I mean, I don't know what Steve Smith is like as a teammate in terms of as a mentor. But I would say that the odds are that Steve Smith is probably concerned about his own game on a very regular basis to make sure that he's the best he can possibly be. And I'm not saying that's bad. I'm saying that's what a guy that everyone wrote off last year for dead, who still looked like he plays about 1.5 feet taller than what he actually is.
That is definitely true. That's definitely true. He is a guy who has made his living off of doing the small things to be better.
Yeah.
Right here again, it's just a lot of balls where he's catching it going to the ground. Part of it I understand is, like I said, is quarterback play. Then part of it is route running. You run a crisp enough route, you get back to the ball, you don't have to fall, and make those plays. I guarantee this is probably another rub route right here, because this seems to be their bread and butter play.
And he fades back into it again.
Back into it again. He's not just getting across. I would take one step up the field, and then I would be across, almost flat, because I would want to create as much separation between me and that defensive back as possible.
Yeah.
He's drifting into the end zone, but there's a blitz coming. So he would actually be filling a void. He would be filling the void that's there because that linebacker's blitzing. Again, small things, not things that aren't fixable, but they're only fixable if he will dedicate himself to making that happen, and that just remains to be seen. Because I know that Baltimore needs help at wide receiver right now.
Yeah.
They're not looking for someone to be. They don't want another project. They don't want another guy. Hey, 2 years from now he's going to be great. They need someone right now, because Joe Flacco's an NFL a Super Bowl caliber quarterback right now. They've got a Super Bowl caliber defense right now. They don't need to wait 2 years and 3 years, and that's just what I fear is the case with a guy like Perriman, that he may be 2 to 3 years away from you seeing the best Perriman that you're going to see, if you're ever going to see that Perriman.
No, I think that's a terrific point, and that's the type of thing that, again, I love this take, because you are probably being the most stringent about a first round pick that I have had as a guest on here, and I like it because again, you hear to me, I have this about quarterback play. I'm just to me, it's like, look, I know the way the reality of the NFL is. The reality of the NFL is if you get a guy with a pulse and he can throw a ball with strength, it's like, I've joked about it this way. It's like closing time at after happy hour, like at 1 o'clock in the morning, and it's an hour left, and you're trying to go home with somebody. And sorry if we got family here on this one, but if there are people who will go home with anybody because they were lonely, and they've had a little bit too much to drink. And that's the mentality I think the NFL has with quarterback play in the first round. When you have a 45% hit rate over 15 years, now you shouldn't expect them to be at 70 or 80%, because quarterback's a tough position. But at the same time, 45% less than a coin flip, that's kind of scary. So to me, it's like, I appreciate the standpoint that you want to look at it and say, look, if I'm going to pick a quarterback and it's a tough position as it is, I need to develop these guys and not throw them into the fire. Well, as a wide receiver, if I'm saying that wide receiver is a position that should be able to make an impact right away, and that's how I'm going to define it as my top first round pick, then I need to be very stringent about my standards of what that means. Same with quarterback. If you're like, that's the same thing. I mean, if you think a quarterback's a top 15 pick, he better be able to start right away. And that means that he better be doing things right away that you can see, that are tangible, that we never see. I mean, very rarely. We see Andrew Luck, but Andrew Luck was rare.
Yeah, and I think that my quarterback philosophy goes back to the fact that I don't understand why people treat quarterback as if you have to find someone for the next 10 to 12 years. You're not going to have a job for 10 to 12 years, most likely. You need to find someone who can help you win games now. And you don't necessarily have to find someone who's going to last 10 to 12 years. The way that they've devalued the running back is because they were able to decipher that they can find a lot more running backs in later rounds. Well, can't that same thing be said for quarterback? Most of the successful quarterbacks that you see are not number one overall picks. Most of them are mid first round and beyond. And that beyond ranges from third round, fifth round, seventh round. It doesn't matter. You just have to find a guy. So under that, and I talked about, I wrote an article about it, saying that why don't NFL teams pick backups that mirror the exact same skill set that their starter has. Well, there's a reason why, because they don't want other people. Well, they don't want to pay. Number one, they don't want to pay the freight. But number two, they don't want people looking at that backup when they have a solidified starter and going, "Ooh, maybe that backup should be the one out there." I remember when the early on in the Tom Brady days, they had Michael Bishop, and Michael Bishop was absolutely electric.
I
Every
remember.
every preseason, he was electric, and they cut him. They said we can't have this guy around because people are looking at Michael Bishop, and I was in New England at the time, and people were looking at Michael Bishop like, "Yo, man, that guy. I know Brady's good, but that guy is electric." I mean, it was hilarious. It was almost as if Michael Bishop was probably a few years too early to be able to take advantage of an NFL that would have embraced him.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
absolutely.
when you talk about being stringent, it really does come down. There's certain positions that I feel like should be non-developmental in the first round. I actually believe that an offensive lineman should be able to step foot off of a collegiate team and step foot into as a starter as a first round draft pick. Or else why are you drafting them? I believe that a wide receiver, you shouldn't pick a wide receiver in the first round unless you think he's a number one receiver. I don't believe that you should pick a defensive back in the first round unless you are ready to plug him in and just say go. Because that's because those are positions that you've seen everything you need to see by the time they spent 3 years in college. You like I knew after watching him in his freshman year, Vernon Hargraves III was a guy who was going to play on Sundays. Everything else I've seen, like in his sophomore year, didn't matter to me. It's gravy. Vernon Hargraves III, if he gets past the 15th pick, it'll only be because he had some off the field issues, which he'll never have. He has a great family. He's a great kid. Or he had an injury that was debilitating. That's the only way that kid gets past 15, 15 spots in the first round. It doesn't matter to me what else. Doesn't matter to me what his 40 time is. I don't care how high he jumps. I've seen the film. I know the only guy to make him look foolish is a guy who I think is a transcendent level wide receiver. To me, that says a lot,
Yeah.
and the Gators were a train wreck, and so for them to have all of these draft picks is further reason why Will Muschamp should have been fired. Because if they have all these draft picks and he had all this talent, he should have definitely been fired. And I may actually look into Peterson up at Washington getting fired as well because he had like nine guys drafted, and I'm like, man, was Washington really good? Did I miss where Washington's defense is so good? Where did all these defensive players come from? So yeah, I am particular. I am stringent on my critique. Part of it comes because I played the position. Not obviously not as high as Perriman did, but I took pride in it. I've coached the position. I know what you need to do in order to be successful. So if I see it, I'm just going to recognize, and if I don't, I won't. A 40 time doesn't really matter to me at the end of the day.
Me neither. And I this was, I thought, a very, very good show and should hopefully be educational, enlightening for a number of people who are looking at a player and get enamored with speed and not realize how it needs to be applied. And this is a player who has not yet fully applied how to use his speed. In fact, I would say not nearly learned how to apply his speed. So again, folks, you can find Gene Clemmons at Football Game Plan. And Gene, what's your Twitter handle?
You can follow me at Gene Clemmons. Very simple. I know it's crazy when you can get your full name on there, but full disclosure, I had Twitter when Twitter first started. I actually used to use it in my classroom with my kids
Nice.
to relay to relay questions to them throughout the day. And so I started using Twitter very early. So I'm at Gene Clemmons. Stay on the lookout for my first and forever column that I come out with during the NFL season. Just discussing things that I see, going on in the NFL, things that bother me, things that I love. Um, also look out. I do a lot of youth on high school sports. I've got a new little web show that I'm going to start here in the next few weeks, hopefully, called Three Plays, where I'm going to look at a high school prospect. I'm going to take three plays, and in those three plays, I'm going to tell you why I believe that kid can be successful at the collegiate level. And so really it's going to be a little 5 minute thing where I break down those three plays and really give you an intimate look at a young man, and hopefully get kids a little more exposure on the back end.
Nice. Very nice. Well, I look forward to us doing this again in the near
Definitely.
future. It'll probably be, well, I don't know, near to me will be in the next
Few
probably
months.
3 to 6 months. Exactly. But we will, I want to get you on the regular rotation if you're good with that. We'll do, this is fun. And I want to do this every week to some degree. I'm probably going to do these twice a month. I've got a couple other things I've kind of have up my sleeve that I'm going to do a little different with these shows, but I want to keep having guests on, and you've been a terrific guest, Gene, and I appreciate you doing that. Absolutely. So for Gene Clemmons, I'm Matt Waldman. This was the RSP Film Room. You guys have a good night.